Hello and welcome to War Horses, the only college equestrian podcast that had a decent time at the national championships. I'm your host, Auburn Elvis. Let's talk about some college equestrian. Well, another season has come and gone. We had our national championship tournament down in Ocala, and let's take a look at some meet recaps. So on day one of the tournament down in Ocala, we had the quarterfinals of the dual discipline tournament. Semifinal number one, when we looked at this last week, we ran the numbers, and the prediction for this meet was Auburn 11 and Fresno State 5, or maybe Auburn 10, Fresno State 5, or maybe Auburn 11, Fresno State 6. But it was going to be about a 5 or 6 point margin is what the stats thought. Let's see what really happened. The meet started off with fences. That went 2-1 for Auburn. Reining was going over in the western ring, and that went 3-2 for Fresno State. So at the half, it was 4-4. It was a 4-4 tie. And it looked like another one of those years where Auburn was not going to do too well in the first round. But the second half completely flipped the script, and Auburn got on track. They won flat 5-0, and they won horsemanship 5-0. So they swept the entire second half and went from a 4-4 tie to Auburn winning 14-4. So they ended up winning bigger than the stats thought they would. Just an incredible second half. Wow, they really put the hammer down and just overwhelmed poor Fresno State there in that second half. So Auburn advances on into the semifinals. In the other quarterfinal, we had South Carolina versus SMU. This was the number 4 versus number 5 semifinal or quarterfinal. The prediction for this was SMU winning 9-7 or maybe 9-8. Let's see what really happened. Fences went 4-1 for South Carolina. Reining was a 2-2 tie. So the halftime score was South Carolina was up 6-3. So yeah, they had a good lead there at half, and then the flat started. That went 3-2 for South Carolina, and horsemanship went 3-2 for SMU. That made the final score South Carolina 11, SMU 8. So the Gamecocks got it done against a good opponent there in the first round, and yeah, they would go on to the semifinals. On the other side of the bracket, we had a quarterfinal between number 3 Georgia and number 6 Oklahoma State. I was very interested in this one because I haven't been real big on the Cowgirls this season. In fact, I got some people messaging me, "Hey, what's up, Auburn Elvis? What's with you and Oklahoma State? Why don't you?" And I was like, well, basically, their schedule was terrible. They played the Big 12 schedule like they're supposed to, but then all of their non-conference meets were against teams from the ECAC or independent SMU, and they didn't schedule anybody from the SEC. So you really didn't know, was Oklahoma State good and they just didn't get a chance to show it against some top-notch competition? Because again, SEC was the top 4 teams in the nation at the end of the year there. Or was this a case where Oklahoma State wasn't that great and they kind of got by with a much easier schedule than they would typically have in a season? Well, they faced off against Georgia. The prediction for this was Georgia 9, Oklahoma State 7, or maybe 9-8, Georgia winning. Let's see what really happened. Fences went 3-1 for Georgia. Reining went 3-2 for Georgia. So the halftime score was Georgia 6, Oklahoma State 3. It got even worse in the second half for them. Flat went 4-1 for Georgia, and horsemanship also went 4-1 for Georgia. That made the final score Georgia 14, Oklahoma State 5. So yeah, when the Cowgirls finally had to face an SEC team, didn't go so well for them. Yeah, I mean, they really should have played some tougher competition in the season. Maybe that would have helped them, or at least it would have showed us, hey, they don't do too well when they match up against some of the best teams. So it's all over now. So there you go. Georgia advances. Oklahoma State goes home. The other quarterfinal to look at, number 2 Texas A&M versus number 7 TCU. Now the prediction for this was a 9-9 tie with a tiebreaker win for Texas A&M, or another possible score was TCU 10, Texas A&M 9. So let's see what would really happen. Fences went 3-1 for Texas A&M. Reining went 4-1 for Texas A&M. So that made the halftime score Texas A&M 7, TCU 2. So the Aggies were in control. But then TCU came back on them in the second half. Flat went 3-2 for TCU, and horsemanship went 3-2 for TCU. So that made the final score Texas A&M 11, TCU 8. It turned out to be a very close, or pretty close meet. I mean, Texas A&M still won, but TCU, they acquitted themselves much better in the second half. Good job. So that was day one. It was all dual discipline quarterfinals. Those were the teams that advanced. Actually, it was all SEC teams. Number 1 Auburn, number 2 Texas A&M, number 3 Georgia, and number 4 South Carolina. All advanced, making it into a basically an SEC tournament do-over. And so over we go to day 2. Now with day 2, let's see. Then we would have some single discipline action. Let's see. That actually happened in the afternoon. I'll go ahead and do the first round of that one. So the semifinal, number 1 was Lynchburg versus Sweetbriar. Again, I wasn't a big fan of this because we've had this matchup so many times in the past. It would have been nice to see these teams play somebody else, but they faced off against each other, and it was a really exciting meet. The prediction for this was Lynchburg 5, Sweetbriar 4. Let's see what really happened. Fences went 3-2 for Sweetbriar, and so of course that was the halftime score, 3-2. And then in the second half, flat went 3-2 for Lynchburg. That made the final score a 5-5 tie, and the tiebreaker points went to Lynchburg, 787 to 774, and then some spare change. So the Hornets advance. It was a close meet, though. Sweetbriar looked pretty good. Took him down to the wire. Over in the other semifinal, we had Charleston versus Dartmouth. Now again, I would have liked it if these teams had ridden against some other teams, but it is what it is. So the prediction for this was Dartmouth 5, Charleston 3, or maybe even Dartmouth 6, Charleston 3. Let's see what really happened. Fences went 4-0 for Charleston. So right there, they've done better than the stats thought they would. So with that big halftime lead, all they had to do was take care of business second half, and they would advance. Well, in the second half, flat went 3-2 for Charleston. So they did almost as well. And yeah, that made the final score. Charleston 7, Dartmouth 2. So complete reversal of what the stats thought would happen. Just an amazing meet. And good job, Cougars. Boy, I tell you, I mean, this was a shock. Now, it wasn't a shock to y'all, but it was a shock to everybody but y'all, because y'all looked really good in this semifinal. You didn't look great in your conference tournament, but boy, you certainly made up for it here. So yeah, you would go on to face Lynchburg in the championship the next day. So now let's look at the dual discipline semifinals, because we basically have to. All right, semifinal, number 1 Auburn versus number 4 South Carolina. We thought this was going to be Auburn versus SMU. Boy, yeah, we did not. The stats did not put a lot of stock in South Carolina, and the stats were not accurate in that regard. So we didn't have a prediction for this one, and it's just as fine that we didn't, because guess what? Auburn underperformed. I know that's a shocker. In the postseason, Auburn underperforming. It's actually a shock when they don't. But, so yeah. Fences, it went 3-2 for South Carolina. Reining went 3-2 for South Carolina. So the halftime score was South Carolina 6, Auburn 4. Now, Auburn rode fine. It's just South Carolina rode better. I mean, they rode like the number 1 team, and Auburn rode about like the 5th or 4th best team. So then in the second half, but you were like, okay, well, if Auburn starts riding great, they can get back in this. But Auburn never started riding great. They did okay, but they didn't ride great. Flat went 3-2 for South Carolina, and horsemanship was a 2-2 tie. So that made the final score South Carolina 11, Auburn 8. Auburn got 2 points in every event, didn't win any event. You can't win with a performance like that. I mean, yeah, it's almost impossible to win if you do not win at least one event. I mean, you could technically do it if you tied it and everything and then win the tiebreaker, but boy, I ain't never seen that happen. But yeah, oh well. Gamecocks advanced. They were the more prepared team, the better prepared team. Even though they didn't have the raw talent, they got it done when it mattered. So once again, Auburn got all the talent in the world, got more All-Americans than anybody. But boy, when it comes time to produce, some other school's going to do better than Auburn, almost certainly. Yeah, we'll talk about that at the end. Okay, semifinal number 2. This pit number 2 Texas A&M against number 3 Georgia. Now, we thought we were going to get this one, and the prediction for this was Georgia 10, Texas A&M 6. So not even that great. Stats did not have a good semifinal round. Well, fences went 2-1 for Texas A&M. And then Reining went 3-2 for Texas A&M. So the halftime score was Texas A&M 5, Georgia 3. So this was kind of the same margin as Auburn, but technically a little bit closer because of that tie. So in the second half, if Georgia could turn things around, maybe they would make it. Well, no, they didn't. Flat went 3-2 for Texas A&M, and horsemanship went 4-1 for Texas A&M. That made the final score Texas A&M 12, Georgia 6. So here the Bulldogs, just got beat in the second half. Texas A&M goes on to the finals. So Texas A&M is having a great postseason. They won the SEC tournament, and now they're shooting on through this tournament. They're in the championship against South Carolina. So over we go to day 3. Here we go. In the morning, we had the single discipline tournament. Lynchburg versus College Charleston. We did not think we were going to get these two teams. We thought it would be Lynchburg and Dartmouth. So we don't have a prediction, but the prediction would have been in favor of Lynchburg. It's just by how much. Well, here's what really happened. Fences went 4-1 for Lynchburg, and then in the second half, flat was a 2-2 tie, and so Lynchburg ended up winning 6-3 over Charleston. So, good job to the Hornets. You are the national champions once again. You took a year or so off, but now you're back on top of the mountain. Charleston, good job getting there, because, man, I tell you, around conference tournament time, it did not look like you were going to get there, but you did. You got the invite, and you showed that, okay, we can be prepared for the tournament. We can show up. We can get that upset against Dartmouth, and then do pretty well, against Lynchburg. Lynchburg is tough, and they really wanted it, so, yeah. Good job to everybody. Good tournament overall. There were some things, obviously, that weren't my favorite, but hey, you can't have everything you want. Good job to South Carolina and Lynchburg. They are your national champions in the respective disciplines. So we know who number one is in those various disciplines, but I bet you're wondering, well, who are the other teams? What are the other, how would I order things? So let's take a look at the last of the season, the official Auburn Elvis College Equestrian Rankings. Well, obviously, South Carolina would be number 1. Number 2, Texas A&M. Okay, I'm going to move you up to number 2. You don't have quite the talent, but when it matters, you get it done, and that's more important than talent, is riding well. So you're number 2. Number 3 is Auburn. Auburn had the greatest regular season of any of these teams, but then the postseason, they just couldn't put it together. So there you go. You're number 3, though. Georgia, you're number 4. You looked good at times, and in the postseason, you did all right, but you let some other teams get hot on you, and there you go. You're number 4. Number 5 is SMU. Good season overall for the Mustangs. Again, in their recent history, they had a couple of national championships, but now things are coming back down to earth ever since Carol Gwynn left, and we'll see if that continues or where they end up in these next couple of seasons. But yeah, things are different for SMU these days. Number 6, Oklahoma State. Yeah, Cowgirls, you're number 6 basically by process of elimination. You should probably be a little bit lower, but you're better than the teams below you, so number 6 is where you are. Number 7, TCU. Good season, at times for the Horned Frogs, but then lost and didn't look great in certain meets, and there you go. You did okay, though, down in Ocala. You got some points, so you made it interesting. And the number 8 team would be, I'll go ahead and put Fresno State in there. Again, technically, they're probably better than UC Davis. But, man, I don't know. I still would have invited Davis to this tournament. I think they would have done just as well against Auburn. But, so Fresno State's 8. And I'll say UC Davis is a very close number 9. Hello. That is your top 9. I won't do top 10. Baylor would probably be number 10. I'll go ahead and throw Baylor in there. They're number 10. Okay, now let's look at the single discipline. I said Lynchburg, you're number 1. Number 2 is Bridgewater. Number 2 is also Charleston. Number 2 is also Centenary.
It's a twister! It's a twister!
Number 2 is also Dartmouth. Number 2 is also Sacred Heart. And number 2 is also Sweetbriar. Basically, after Lynchburg, any of the rest of y'all are interchangeable, basically. On any given weekend, any of y'all could beat any of y'all, any of the others, and on neutral side, on neutral horses. Now, on neutral horses, I think Lynchburg would beat every single one of you. But as far as if it was, the what is that, 6 of y'all getting together, man, that would be a great tournament. The tournament for second place on neutral horses, boy, yeah. Doing some sort of a round robin, that would be very exciting because, somebody would have to win that. As it is, y'all are all number 2. And then at number 8, we have Berry. And at number 9, we have Swanee. These 2 teams, they got some wins at certain points, but overall they were a class below that group of the number 2 teams, and so that's where y'all land. So that's kind of how everybody kind of panned out near the end of the season, where everybody ended up in my rankings at least, and So now let's talk about some final thoughts. It was a good season. It was an exciting season. We had a lot of parity. This was our first season where every team in the nation, both single and dual discipline, got a win. We had nobody this year who went completely winless. That's a first. So good job. That speaks well of all of the programs. They're all growing. They all can, when you give them enough advantages, they can get that win. So good job to everybody. Everybody has something they can be proud of and thankful for. Particularly South Carolina, man, it wasn't but a couple of years ago that they were languishing down there in the 4th, 5th, 7th, 6th, 8th, 9th spots nationally. And then they hired Carol Gwynn away from SMU, and now they are on top of the mountains. And they're pretty much the program to beat right now. She's still getting in, building up the talent level, but even with the talent that she's been able to get so far, she can get the most out of it. Yeah, they're doing something right over there, and other teams need to take notice. Particularly the team that most of my listeners care about, Auburn. Boy, how delicate can I be with this? Now, a lot of y'all are getting alarmed at Auburn's performances in the postseason. I am too, but many of y'all are jumping to the wrong conclusions. A lot of y'all are like, oh boy, I bet we messed up, when we let Greg retire and we should have kept him around. And I'm like, no. These same problems existed when Greg Williams was still the coach. Auburn was underperforming at basically since COVID. Auburn has almost every year underperformed in the national championship tournament. And that happened for a couple of years while Greg was still around. So you can't blame this on Jessica Braswell. In fact, I think it would be very accurate to say that the path that Greg Williams put us on, some of the decisions he made, because they didn't quite work out, has gotten Auburn where it is. And I talked about this when he retired. Basically, Auburn has that family business mindset where, you've got your secret ingredients and your recipes and your single way of doing things. You only promote from within, and everybody you hire, you teach them your method and you do it your way. That's a very small business, family operated business mindset. That is Auburn Equestrian. Everybody they've hired, with one sort of exception, has been somebody who's come up through the Greg Williams system. Everybody rode for Greg Williams except for Mary McNeely, the coach of the Western. She actually was an assistant coach over at Georgia, and then she was in the private sector, and then she went to Auburn, and then she went back to the private sector, and now she's back at Auburn. So she's been with Auburn for long enough that you can kind of say, all right, she's part of the Auburn Greg Williams system as well. And again, I don't have a problem with that, except that what that does is if you get into a problem where you get into a rut or something ain't working, and I think we can now look at and say, okay, over the last 6 years, something ain't working in the postseason. If you get into that position, you have no new ideas. You have no outside thoughts and plans and ideas and things you can try because everybody in the organization has been only taught one way of doing things. And so you're kind of locked in. Unless you bring in some new blood. Now, again, some of y'all are going to hear this and say, oh, that means we should fire people. No. I don't think we should fire anybody. But I do think we should hire some people. At least one person from some of these other SEC programs, because right now, all of them are more successful in the postseason than Auburn. Every single SEC program has won some sort of championship since the last time Auburn won a championship. Okay, so they're all doing a better job of their postseason preparation than Auburn. Auburn is now the worst in the SEC at postseason preparation, and that's not an opinion. That's facts. You look at the data, Auburn is getting less out of its riders in the postseason than every other SEC program. And why is that? Well, nobody knows. And because if Auburn knew why that was happening, then it wouldn't be happening, okay? Because they're not choosing to be like that. They're trying very hard not to make that happen, and yet it is still happening consistently. So the only path I see out of this is Auburn needs to bring in another coach, another assistant coach, and pick their brain and say, okay, how do they do it over there at that program? Because we need to think about some changes we can make. Because our girls are showing up not as prepared. They're getting okay rides, but they're not getting great rides out of their talent. Whereas you see South Carolina that doesn't have nearly as many All-Americans as Auburn, you wouldn't have known that from looking at watching that semifinal. Their girls were getting higher scores across the board than their counterparts. And these were girls that, had winning percentages of about 45%. Going up against an Auburn girl who has a winning percentage of about 60% or higher, and they're beating them. That's preparation. I mean, that's just being locked in, and Auburn wasn't, and Auburn's opponent was. Auburn needs to get some new ideas because what they've been doing, that ain't working. If Auburn Equestrian wants to stay relevant, they're going to have to bring in some new ideas, particularly about preparation of the postseason. Now, during the regular season, it's really, really interesting. Auburn has been the most successful program in the regular season ever since COVID. SMU had a period there where they were bouncing around between 1 and number 2, but at that same time, Auburn was also number 1 or number 2 or number 3. They've never really dropped below number 3 for the last 7-8 years. Auburn hasn't. Or actually more than that because they were for almost 10 years, Auburn has been a top 3 program. No other team out there has had that much sustained success like Auburn Equestrian has. So Auburn Equestrian is doing something right. I mean, they're doing a lot right. They're doing really good at recruiting. They're doing really good at getting girls trained and ready during the regular season. But when it comes to the postseason, other teams are doing a better job than Auburn. And that's the part that has to get fixed, or else Auburn's going to start regressing down because you can't keep bringing in recruits when you ain't got no trophies in the trophy case, no rings. And right now, all the other SEC schools got rings that Auburn doesn't. But that said, yeah, you look at Georgia. Georgia has not had the sustained success that Auburn has. Texas A&M hadn't had it. SMU hadn't had it. Oklahoma State, sort of. They've had a lot of success because they've been dominating the Big 12 for the last 6-7 years. But then, they're not. They turned it into one national championship since Auburn last won the national championship. But there's been lots of years where Oklahoma State lands like they are now down at number 6. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble now. But you see where I'm going with this, hopefully, that Auburn doesn't need to fire anybody, but they do need to add somebody with some outside opinions, some outside vision, and not change everything, but look at what could possibly be that missing key piece that would get them over the hump in the postseason. Because, everybody else is doing it better than Auburn is right now. So, all right. Hopefully y'all understand that I ain't picking on anybody. I'm just saying things are the way they are, and we got to be honest with each other. That out of the way, I do want to leave you with a better, more happier, positive final thought than that. And I'll say this has been a fun season, even with the stuff I just talked about. It's been a really fun season. Down in the single discipline, good job to Lynchburg, but good job to everybody. Like I said, everybody got a win. We've seen Centenary come out of nowhere and start, beating people. Did great in the conference tournament. Dartmouth is still doing good. This was the best year for Sacred Heart that they've ever had. They just missed out on getting an invite to the postseason. Good job to them. Barry is building. Swanee took a step back this year, but they won't be down forever. I mean, they value equestrian too much over there that they're going to get some good riders in there. They're going to turn things around. Yeah, Sweetbriar, same. But Sweetbriar had a down point in the middle of this season, and here they are. They looked real good. They're the team that gave Lynchburg a run for their money. Nobody else did that. So yeah. Lots of good reasons to smile on behalf of all you programs. So good job to everybody. And and I guess I'll say as a special word about UC Davis. Man, went undefeated in conference play, won their conference tournament, just missed out on an invite to the national championship. Again, if it was up to me, I would have invited you. And yeah, they're having to fight that battle to keep the program alive. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully when we get back together in the preseason for next year, we'll be able to report that clearer heads prevailed over at UC Davis and they wanted to keep the program around. I'll tell you right now, the stuff that's coming out on that, it really seems like the athletic department was not being at least intellectually honest or forthcoming with the motivations so hopefully they can see the light and keep that program around, because it is doing a lot of good for their university. It's doing a lot of good for the sport. Yeah, UC Davis, all of our thoughts are with you, and hopefully, like I said, when we get back together, we'll have some good news to report that the program is still with us. So well, that is all for this episode and all for this season. I'm your host, Auburn Elvis. Thank you very much for listening, and war horses.